Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmer's Tropic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, November 11th. Happy Veterans Day, and thank you to all the service members for your service out there. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read that full risk disclaimer there. So another interesting day, I would say, on the tape. A lot of the word that probably, if I had one word that would sum up today, would probably be rotation. A lot of rotation into some different groups. You could see that on the left of your screen when we look at sectors. Look at how strong healthcare, biotech was today, and also energy. These two groups can be associated with value, and value really made a nice move today. The VTV ETF, that's large cap value, was up 0.8 of a percentage point today, and the VUG large cap growth was down 0.2 of a percentage point. So a little bit of maybe profit taking. I think that there was a couple of stories in the AI space today that were not particularly, I wouldn't say like crazy positive. So I think that I don't think it's a huge stretch to come out and say that probably the AI trade is a bit crowded. And there's been a lot of money in growth stocks because those have worked the best over the last 6 months. So I think some of the air is kind of coming out a little bit of that trade. A couple things, and I'll kind of just jump to the charts here, and then we will review. I'll come back and review more things, but I'm going to start with NVIDIA. This was kind of like a little bit of an excuse to sell NVIDIA. So let me just change the screen here and go to the charts here. So yeah, a little bit of an excuse to sell NVIDIA today. It was down about 3% for the day. Semis were also, some semis underperformed quite decently today. The semiconductor ETF was down 2.2%, so actually did a little bit better than NVIDIA. But the main story out was that, what's the, I'm drawing a blank now, but Masa-san basically said that they no longer have a stake in the company any longer. So hence the stock kind of fell. But and look at where it closed. By the way, I bought in NVIDIA down in here, and I mentioned if it would break 192.80, then I would get rid of it, and I did that today, and it actually came back and closed above. Funny how that does that. SoftBank, by the way, sorry about that, is the one who the one that cut the stake. Sorry, it's been a long day. But regardless, it managed to close right at the top of the value area. So perhaps I didn't need to make any adjustment there, but I did, and that's fine. I just kind of saw a lot of rotation on the tape, which I'm going to get to. But that was the one story. The second story that was CoreWeave, right? And forget about like getting into like the nitty gritty of the earnings report. This stock has not been a good performer since it took out that upside VPOC, which we talked about. I think that was one of the last times that I tweeted about this name, was that it had an upside VPOC to take out. That was at 150. The stock's trading below 90. So that is a huge haircut. And we're talking about a month. The stock has gone down a lot. So it just makes me think, when you see moves like this, and it's amazing what single stocks do in this market versus what the indices do. But that's a huge move from the highs of where this hit, and again, just a month ago. So this name falling, and this is very much an AI name. And then also NBIS reported earnings, and this stock fell 7%. They announced that they are going to get a 3-year deal with Meta, I think for $3 billion. But you look at their current quarter, and I get it. I don't like to do, I like to be forward looking because stock prices are forward looking. But man, they do not make a lot of revenue. And some of these companies that are these high growth names, right, they just again, they've got big contracts like NBIS has a big contract with Microsoft as well. But let me just run down the numbers for you really quick. Their third quarter revenue was 146 million versus so they missed estimates. Their estimates was 156. That's not a lot of money for this company and for the growth that it's had. So that's what I always kind of try to come to terms with, is like, if they miss, and we're talking about a company that right now just made $146 million over the last quarter. The stock has gone from what, $30 to 110. So it's kind of the opposite of what this was trading in May and April. The stock was trading around $30. So you kind of have to say, is it worth that much? Now, I guess if those contracts, two contracts that they're getting, and whatever other deals that they have, maybe that outweighs some of it. But I don't know. It just seems like the stock has really advanced a lot. And again, part of that is just a momentum trade that's gone on with this. Also, a stock that was really hot a couple weeks ago. This IREN was down another 4.6%. So there's some definite trades, and so what I'm getting to here is that perhaps you need to be and I'm saying this for myself. I'm not giving out any advice. I'm saying that being maybe a little bit more selective in the AI trade right now, considering that a lot of stocks are coming off the highs pretty decently. Oklo just reported after hours. Now we know Oklo doesn't make any money, but there is future business, right? And that's how the market does look. But this name in the uranium trade has really come undone too. If I can get this appropriately moved over here, but sorry about this, guys. Sometimes I have a little bit of a trouble with, but this looks like a pretty decent head and shoulders, right? Left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and you could use the 200-day moving average as maybe the neckline. And I think that this stock could come down to 86, especially if it doesn't regain 113, which is a level. That's the bottom of the value area for the month. So there's part of this AI trade that if you're noticing, right, and observing some of these stocks and some of these groups that were super hot, some of them are really kind of losing their lackluster. I tried to trade CIFR last week because it kind of came into support there a little bit. But look at this. And again, I'm not saying that this completely is going to break down here. It's just inside value. Probably comes down and kind of gets down here to the 1684 level. That would still be a little bit of a higher low. But these things are starting to kind of wake up a little bit. In yesterday's video, I talked about how strong the optical names are, and they certainly are. And I'm still holding Sienna. Sienna came in a little bit back to the 5-day moving average. I didn't add to it. The reason why I didn't add to it is because these names are up so much, right? I don't know if you've done this exercise, but and Light, by the way, got way extended away from the 5-day moving average, so came in, and all it is kind of hanging in here. But look at the weekly charts in some in some of these names. Look at CLS, for example, which was down. It's a lot, these names, and that was one that also consolidated. So today, the AI trade took a break, and like I said, I think some areas are going to suffer more of a correction because there's a lot of AI names. There's a lot of AI names out there. Perhaps we don't need that many AI names. Now, before I get into some of the good performers, but I kind of remember sometimes certain things rhyme with me, and I'm just looking at software. Remember, we've got a lot of software companies. That's been one of the issues with software companies before, is there's a lot of little like enterprise software names that kind of do the same thing. The AI trade is kind of, to me, getting pretty saturated in terms of how many companies there are out there that are making data centers. And I mean, there's a lot in each one of these spaces. So you could disagree with me, that's fine. But my point, what the conclusion that I'm trying to make here is that maybe being a little bit more selective in some of these names, because there's a lot of AI related names, data center names, cooling names. So that's kind of my thought, and I wouldn't mind if the AI trade took a little bit of a break. Okay, so what was the positive on this side? Because this market, SPY finished up 0.2 of a percentage point. The equally weighted S&P outperformed today, so it was much more like of a distribution today. That outperformed today, and so did the diamonds. The Dow finished up 1.2%, so heavy outperformance there. But maybe I should show that chart. Right, here's DIA, which made I think that made a new closing. That's a new closing high for the diamonds today. So I will be tweeting that out shortly. But here's RSP, right, which has been lagging, but today was leading. So again, just more things kind of got out of the top heavy AI trade, high growth, and into some of the other areas. I showed a chart of biotech. This took a little bit of a back seat here once it hit this VPOC, but look at this move higher. And this was on our watch list for the for this week. Right, here's my watch list, by the way, and this is what you get every week, every weekend. But I had XBI on here, and this is in the TTG trend portfolio, but here it is. And I put, I said, I like the group and the ETF over the single names for risk purposes. Yeah, I mean, I generally will trade XBI a little bit more. I'm not a specialist in biotech, so I don't follow like the different drug studies. So hence why I had XBI on our watch list. But very strong. And what was interesting today is not just biotech, but the just breadth that took place in this group. So probably not an ETF that you look at too much, but I keep this on one of my lists just so I know what pharma names are doing, which are a little bit different than, like the overall healthcare ETF. Right, here's the healthcare ETF, which was up 2.3% today. Right. So not out to new highs, but that is a break out of the value area for the year. Here's what the weekly chart looks like. And I think the weekly looks pretty good, right? But here's PPH. Right, look at this. So and I tweeted this chart out earlier, but very strong. And, if you go through some of these names and see what actually, right? And this is the whole thing. When you see a name, like when you see a group have the performance like it had today, I do like to go through the components of the ETF and figure out, is it just one name? Was it one name that had good earnings and it's dragging everything up, or was it a little bit of everything? Today looked like a little bit of everything, and I'm sure there was probably a catalyst or two, and a couple names that reported earnings, but almost every name in this was green for the day. Interesting, like McKesson was down today, which has been a little bit of which has been a leader in that group. But look at all these names that were up that much, right? And it's the same thing when you look at healthcare, which is a bigger ETF. Right, there's more names in this. VTRS was the outperformer, but there's a lot. And there's one other ETF that I'm going to show you too, because they're different groups. This is XHE. This is the medical equipment ETF. So Tandem's in here, QDEL is in here, and a lot of other names too, some medical device companies as well, but very, very strong looking. So let me jump back to the charts and we can go through a couple more of the oops, sorry, we could go through I hit the wrong button. We could go through a couple more of these here. All right, so there's the PPH. Here's the XHE, which could have more of a runway. Hasn't done much this year. Now just broke into that value area. Notice that the value area for the year. Again, I'm on the weekly chart here. That's why you see the value area for the year. It says high volatility expected. Right, so maybe that high volatility hasn't started yet. Very interesting. Couple names to highlight, just individual names that I thought were interesting. AMGN breaking out to new highs. So again, why we kind of look at the overall market like this is to figure out where the rotations, where the money is going. I mean, look at this. This stock was up 4.6 today, 4.6%. Like somebody really wanted to be in healthcare today. Big move. Merck, which has been an underperformer in the group, but somebody's thinking it's going to catch up, right? The stock's trading right around $90 right now. Somebody bought I believe they bought it anyway. April of next year, the 100 strike calls, 25,000 contracts, 25,000 contracts for $7.7 million. Right. So if you're looking for a catch-up trade in healthcare, which again showed big signs of momentum today, big accumulation today. Somebody really likes the Merck 100 strike calls, which would just basically get you back up to here, by the way. The bottom of the value area is all the way up at 108. Right. So very interesting. I thought. Now, what other group was very strong today? This is kind of a tough one, but this is because energy is sometimes tough. Sometimes you see energy, kind of the last leg of a rally, which again, this is a little bit of like having battle scars. But I remember the last couple times that that energy tried to break out here, and look at the drop that happened thereafter, um, here, and then what we got hit with April, right? So sometimes, and when you see energy start to rally, sometimes it's the very last leg that's going to happen in the market, right? And you could go through and you could look. So this was back in November. So we could bring up SPY, for example, right? So this was this obviously was April, where we had the big spill lower. We didn't really get that much there, but so that's what makes me a little bit wary of when energy is rallying, when other things are seeing profit taking. I think OI8 still looks good. I do really like, and I did buy some energy today because I think that this has a chance. So again, here's the weekly chart. So for example, like Exxon, why can't Exxon break out here? I don't have a reason why Exxon can't break out of going sideways for a couple of years. So I did buy a little bit of Exxon today. Another name that I bought today was FANG. Right, look at how coiled this is today. Right, so it did not close on its highs, and it's had some difficulty with this 150 level. But what I like about this is now all the moving averages, before, like, the moving averages were separated. So it would go up to the 200-day moving average, fail, go up to the 200-day moving average and fail, go up to the 200-day moving average and fail. But now you're starting to get this 200-day moving average coiled up with the 50 and the 20 and the 5-day moving average. And maybe this begins to kind of ascend and get out of this. Considering that you're seeing a lot of other moves. I did get long Schlumberger last week, was it? And I just said, hey, this would be an easy trade. Right? And this was the beginning of last week. I said, I'm going to go long versus the 200-day moving average, and let's see if it reverts back up to about 39.50. So I actually took my first target in this today. So that's kind of the thought. I know that's a little bit different than what I went over in yesterday's video. Yesterday's video, I talked about how well the growth names are working, but there's nothing wrong with a little rotation out of this market, out of some of the high flyers and into some of these names for now. That's my viewpoint, because I think overall, which I usually cover the indices first in this video, but I feel like I don't really need to cover the indices, as long as, per what I said in yesterday's video, as long as SPY stays above 672.82, then hey, maybe it's a game of rotation that goes on in this market. I just wanted to show one other thing with the Qs too, just to kind of illustrate what happened. And again, today is just one day, so please don't think that that there's a whole big change in trend. I'm just kind of picking up on on some of the signals from the market. But look at the Qs today, which finished down about 0.3 of a percentage point. Look at what went up today, right? It wasn't like, okay, the high growth names went up, but the healthcare names, believe it or not, there's some value names in, or value areas of the market. I'm talking like referring value versus growth. DXCM, which I guess you could say that might be a growth name, that was up 6% today, but that is healthcare and medical equipment, as I went over. AMGN was up 4.6%. Gilead. Now, Gilead is not a growth name. That was up 3.7. So again, look at the market leaders today. It really, if these didn't participate, the Qs would have been down a lot more than that today. And that's probably maybe could have been a head scratcher for you if you're all in tech and you're like, geez, how is this market doing what it's doing? Because there's a big rotation out of even within the Qs, which to me is more growth. VRTX was up 1.9%. Starbucks was up 2% today. Honeywell, 2.2%. How Keurig Dr. Pepper is in here, I don't know, but it's up 2.3% today. PayPal was up 1%. So again, also a lot of underperformers, right? So again, a kind of a switch into some of the underperformers, beating up areas of the market. And you could see that by looking at the Qs. And again, a lot of semi names led lower. Micron was down 4.8%, App11 down almost 9%. CEG, which is also part of the AI trade, it's a uranium name, down as well. Okay. Is that all that I always forget to go over the Bitcoin chart? I want to go over that. And also, there's a couple of things that didn't work out for me today. I took a shot at a couple things. Um, Bitcoin, not one of them, but I'm going to talk about gold in just a second. But here's Bitcoin. I don't think that this still looks, I've said this for a couple days. Maybe people don't like it when I say things that aren't super bullish, because everybody on Twitter is super bullish. And if you say something that's not super bullish, they come at you. Um, by the way, like that to me is a very good sentiment check. I know that there's these other surveys like the AAII, which is, by the way, just people who are retired at home who are day trading. But hey, I guess that's some gauge of sentiment too. But to me, I think for the majority, I know that there's perma bears out there, but I would say that the majority of people on X, on Twitter, social media are super bullish. But anyway, regardless, Bitcoin, yes, it bounced. It had this nice reversal day on Friday. It had a nice move yesterday, but look at it today, down 3%. So, and it's back below the 200-day moving average. So that to me is a no-no. And I actually cut out of some crypto exposure last week. I just didn't like how things were looking. Here's Ethereum as well. This is not outside of the value. This is back inside the value area. So if these things kind of get back above the 50-day moving average, yeah, I'll be late a little bit, but that's how I establish the trend along with the 200-day moving average. So I don't like that these things are below their 50-day moving average. And again, there's plenty of other things out there, right? There's plenty of other things to kind of look at. There's one other thing that I was going to go over, but I don't remember what it was. So that might be it. Oh, gold. Sorry. Gold was a little bit disappointing to me because it was up higher in the beginning of the day, but it actually held in there okay. Again, I also I put on a trade yesterday. Again, perhaps I didn't need to do that, but I did take it off today because it closed just below the 50-day moving average and the bottom of the value area. Again, I'm just being very disciplined with my trades. GDX, or trying to do that. GDX tacked on more gains and up another 1% today. So some things to look at that are a little bit different. Now, I talked about gold yesterday, but I did not talk about pharma, healthcare, and energy as well. So and again, I like that there are some good setups in the space. If things were just moving from the lows, I would say, oh, I don't like this. They're just buying the worst performers. But I think a lot of these things may be setting up a little bit. So hope that helps. Try to give a different perspective. Try to give you a perspective every day of what the market is and not exactly what we want it to be doing. If you like the video, please go ahead and like this on YouTube, Twitter, and retweet. I appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.